and welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
And my name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of Your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast.
You are, and you should buy Evan's book.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I feel like we haven't talked about it recently enough, so.
That's true.
So go check it out. It's a good book.
It's available on Amazon. the easiest place to find a book.
Yes. It's like I have a signed copy on my bookshelf. I love that. Along with all my other movie books. And that's what we're here to talk about is movies and food and other kind of fun stuff. And before we get into this week's movies, we want to tell you about this week's bonus episode over on Patreon. We put those out every single week. And this week we talked about the 1987 Japanese comedy, A Taxing Woman, which is about a tax agent and all about money laundering and tax evasion. And we had a great conversation. We had some divergent opinions, but it's a wild movie and it's a great conversation about said wild movie. So if you're a patron already, thank you so much and go check it out. And if you're not, consider joining. We also want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
And now on to this week's movies. I'm going to do a very quick review of the musical Wicked. We're going to talk about Gladiator 2, obviously the sequel to Gladiator. And we're going to talk about Blitz, which is a historical drama. So let me I'm the only one who saw Wicked, and I wasn't even planning on talking about it because I knew I was going to be the only one seeing this because not all of us love musicals, and that's okay. Although loving musicals is also okay because I love a musical, and Evan likes them too. But yeah, I'm someone who, I read the Gregory Maguire novel ages ago. I have seen Wicked on Broadway. I've seen it when it came touring to Boston. I absolutely love it. I love the novel, which is much darker and more somber. I love the musical, which is much fluffier and focuses more on the friendship between Elphaba, aka the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. And this is about their time in Oz before Dorothy arrives. And I was very excited for the movie, which stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande by John Chu. And I was very excited, but I wasn't expecting too much from it because a lot of times a musical adaptation, sure, they're fun, but they don't often capture the same magic that you see on stage. And I have to say, I asked the guys if I could do like just a very quick review because it is fucking amazing. It's so good. I was blown away at how good it was. Like I could not believe how much I enjoyed this, how emotional it made me, how it made me cry, how good the performances were, both from Cynthia Erivo, who is very emotive, and Ariana Grande, who's an utter delight in this role. The singing is spectacular, and they're singing live, which is really great, something I always love in a musical movie. And it's great. It adds a few touches, like kind of few of the like somber theme notes from the book, but mostly it is just the musical. But it's great. It's so good. And so I cannot recommend it enough. If you are a musical fan, if you're a Wicked fan, if you are a fan of the performers in this, Jonathan Bailey from I almost said Downton Abbey. Oh my God, from Bridgerton. He's wonderful. This is just a delightful film. It's so good and so emotional and just so lovely. So had to give my glowing review.
Well, Wicked. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did. It was such a nice surprise, you know? I thought it was just going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to be a thing. It's going to be fine, whatever. But no, it was great. And everybody coming out of the screening that I attended was like gushing about it, which I was kind of surprised by. So, which was nice. It was nice to hear. So, but all right.
Okay.
I've been seeing the signs. People have been posting photos of the signs that say, please don't sing along to the movie. There's going to be a sing-along version. Did you have to deal with any people singing along to the movie in your screening?
You know, it's funny that you say that because it was a packed screening. And I was expecting that. I was prepared for people to sing. No one sang. Everyone was really well behaved.
That's good.
Yeah, I found myself almost starting to sing in a couple of places, and I was like, no, stop, keep it in your head. But yeah. I mean, I get the appeal and the allure of wanting to sing along. It is so fun. But yeah, you don't want to ruin the experience for other people. But luckily, my screening was not that way. So I just got to absorb and enjoy the stellar performances.
Nice.
Yeah. So nice surprise. So I was like, my glowing review is probably not going to make you want to see it because if you want to see it, you're probably going to go already. But because it is such a juggernaut of a not franchise, but piece, as an artistic piece, as it were. But if you're on the fence, go check it out. It's lovely. So now that we've got that kicked off, let's talk about Gladiator 2, which Dave and I both saw. And it is a historical-ish action, and it is directed by Ridley Scott. It's written by David Scarpa, story by Scarpa and Peter Craig, based on the characters by David Franzoni from the very first film. And this one stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hetchinger, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington. And let me give you the description that comes from the press release. Now, I also want to give a warning. I know this is a spoiler piece and we don't care about spoilers, but this is an interesting choice in this description because it gives a spoiler almost right up front that the movie does not do. It kind of like the movie holds some information back. So it's very interesting. Years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. And the reason why I say that's really weird to have a spoiler right in the log line, which, you'd be like, well, that's not a spoiler. The movie hides, not very well, but the movie hides Lucius's identity. Like, you don't actually know, even though I did know, but you don't actually know. It's not confirmed that he's Lucius for like, I don't know, maybe an hour into the movie, like 45 minutes, like a good long time. You think he's just some dude who lives in what's now Algeria. And so it's kind of weird that the synopsis is like, and it's like a big secret that he's Lucius. So anyway, very strange. But yeah, so the movie starts and Paul Mescal is Lucius, but here he's called like Hanno, and he's got a wife, and they're about to defend their village, their community, their town from the invading Roman armada, which is the general is Pedro Pascal. And of course, you meet his wife, and of course, oh, she's going to die. And surprise, she does. She dies. So
immediately,
like she's an archer, and she like immediately dies. And Pedro Pascal is the one who's like, kill her, make sure she dies, because she's killing a lot of his people. So he's outraged and incensed, Paul Mescal. He's incensed, and he's like, I vow vengeance. And so basically he gets captured by the Romans, and he is brought to some outskirt town, and he starts becoming a gladiator, fighting in the games. And then he goes to Rome and starts fighting in the Colosseum, and he's reunited with his mother, who is Lucilla, played by Connie Nielsen from the first film. And she's married to Pedro Pascal, and that's all a big tension because he wants, because Paul Mescal wants to kill him, and it's his mother, and oh my God, what are we going to do? And then the two emperors are both unhinged, and they're really cruel, and they're awful. And then, so they're running around, and then there's also a plot in the Senate where they're trying to overthrow them, just like in the first film. And then you have Denzel Washington doing some very interesting choices, not just with his appearance, with all his rings and gold earrings, but also some very interesting choices in his acting. And he's the one who's like in charge of the gladiators, but he's also making a lot of political machinations behind the scenes. And so there's a lot going on. But yeah, let's delve into it a little bit more. Dave, what did you think?
Well, I have to tell you,
Yes, please do.
because I had no desire to see this.
That's true. You did not.
Because I think Gladiator is an overwrought fucking piece of shit.
Whoa.
That I have never understood the appeal of. The only thing I like about that movie is when Russell Crowe's, they're like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "My name is Gladiator." I'm just like, "That's right. Your name is Gladiator." I don't know why that sticks out to me as
It's
something
amazing.
that I was like, "Yeah, I buy that. I buy that, man." So I didn't want to see this. I didn't read up on Gladiator because the first time I saw it, the only time I saw it, was like opening weekend, whenever that was, 2002, 2000. I don't even remember.
2000.
And so I was pleasantly surprised by this, that I kind of went along for the ride and even had a few like moments at a couple of the kills. Didn't appreciate the CGI blood so much, but I'll tell you, when Denzel starts carrying around the Emperor's head in the Senate meeting, I was like, well, first of all, whoever did the makeup for that head, kudos. Second,
good head on you.
Yeah, exactly. Second, without, all he's doing is kind of being like, hey, this is what we're going to do. But he's carrying around this severed head the whole time. And it's just so malevolent. And he plays it up a little, but I have to tell you, I would love to know what you thought of Denzel's performance, because I fucking ate it up. I was just like, he's gotten to be such a movie star that he's just kind of, he doesn't do the same thing every time, but you can see the Denzel in what's the fucking movie that Antoine Fuqua made 3 of?
Training Day.
The Equalizer.
Oh no, not Training Day. I was like,
you can
only
see
one of those.
Yes, there was only one of those.
Even though they're very different roles, you can see the Denzel is the same actor as Training Day, The Equalizer, and some of his the August Wilson play that he directed.
Fences.
That I can't remember the name of. Fences. The performances aren't similar, but they have that through line that like really big, powerful movie stars have. And I feel like in this, he put a lot of Denzel mannerisms away, and he dropped a bunch of weight. He looks almost gaunt in this, I would say. And the thing that he keeps doing with the robes, like he can't get the robes to fit quite the right way. Like he wants to throw them off and be like, I'm going to take over, motherfucker, but he's not going to do that because he's got to keep everything quiet. And the way he stabs the second emperor through his ear.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I just fucking loved it. I also loved it when Paul Mescal sliced off his hand between the wrist and the elbow.
He sure did.
But you didn't see him drown.
His own hand?
Not his own hand. He slices off Denzel's
Washington.
hand.
Yes, they're in a battle, and he slices off Denzel Washington's. Yeah.
I mean, I knew he was going to kill Denzel. I didn't know it was going to be like that. I think that Pedro Pascal is underused. There's he's second build, and he's in maybe a quarter of this movie.
Yeah, that's generous, which is so sad.
Yeah. I think Paul Mescal is fine. I don't think he's amazing. I liked his friend who was doing all the the suturing on him better. Ravi, that was his name. I think the story is kind of for the birds, and I sort of remembered vaguely that Gladiator, the first one, is roughly about the same thing.
It's exactly about the same thing.
Oh, see, there you go.
It's very, very similar.
And
until you get to more of the end, like with Denzel stuff, then it diverges.
Yeah. And this movie, I think, even though it's Ridley Scott and even though it's a continuation of the story, I don't think it takes itself quite as seriously as the first one does. I don't remember, though. I don't know. I did like the way that Paul Mescal led the other, just kind of, they made him sort of a natural leader. And he does deliver those kind of empty hero speeches well. But I kind of feel like if you're in good shape and you're not a total dud, probably anybody could play this part. So I don't really think that his performance is all that special. I don't know. It's kind of like if you're like me and you didn't want to see it and then you saw it and you're like, hey, this isn't a piece of shit. That maybe you're going to be excited about that. I think the whole this is the kid and he just happens to get, captured. That's fucking stupid. But do
you mean Paul Mescal's character?
Yes.
That he's
like
Lucilla's kid. Yeah.
I mean, it's not even fridging because they sort of forget that there was a wife 15 minutes after she's dead, so.
No, it's still fridging, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But it's like they have that sort of convenient plot thread to make it, to give him purpose for going fucking house on everybody when he gets into the arena. But then it becomes about Denzel's power play and how he's using him as a pawn and thing against these two psycho emperors who are. I didn't love Joaquin Phoenix's performance in the first one, and they're so fucking cartoony. At least the one who's kind of a psycho is interesting to watch, but the doofus one with syphilis, I don't fucking want to watch that shit. He's got a fucking monkey and he's like, the monkey is my, is my consigliere. It's not what he says because they're not Italian in that period of time. But he's like,
no, but the monkey is his second in command. Yeah.
And he's like, and if the monkey can't do it, then it's going to be Denzel.
Yep.
And it's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing that this is in a $250 million movie. At least $250 million.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the sets looked good. A lot of the CGI looked kind of crummy. A lot of the sets looked good, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's fine. Whatever. It's popcorn. Who gives a shit? Megan, what did you think?
I was like, well, I actually do give a shit because unlike you, I fucking love Gladiator. I love it. I love it. I love it. I own it. I watch it frequently. I rewatched it for this and I was like, sometimes you don't watch a movie for a while and you're like, is it really that good? It's really as good as I remember. Fuck yeah, that movie's good. I love Gladiator. It's ridiculous. It is absurd. It takes itself way too seriously and I am here for all of it. I'm here for all of the scenery chewing performances. I am Maximus Desmond Meridius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife. I will have vengeance in this life or the next. I am here for all of it. And I love it. I adore it. So I love that movie. I will say, I couldn't stand this.
Oh.
I thought it was terrible.
Shots fired.
Pew, pew, pew. Shots fired. I think it's a great cast. I love Paul Mescal. I think he is an excellent actor. I agree with you, Dave, that he is whatever here. He's doing whatever. Nothing spectacular, nothing special.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Kind of a bland movie star role,
right, exactly. It's very bland, which is unfortunate because he's not bland. He does a lot of interesting things in many of his performances in other films. Pedro Pascal, I'm obsessed with. Love that man. He is such a stellar actor and he is utterly wasted here. Wasted. It is such a shame because he's fantastic and has so much nuance in his other performances. I will say there are good battle sequences, and I agree with you. I think the sets are great. I was very excited for a naval Coliseum battle. I've been waiting for that because no one ever does a water battle, even though that is historically accurate. So not that anyone expects Gladiator to be really historically accurate. But having said that, I was excited for water battle. So that was great. I was very excited for that. I agree that some of the CGI is not spectacular. It didn't bother me quite so much, but at the same time, if you're spending such a big budget, you'd like it to look good, especially when that's a lot of what this movie hinges on. I thought this movie was undone by absurd moments, and not the absurd moments you're talking about, because the hand chopping off, the head, the severed head, those are amazing absurd moments. I'm irritated by the absurdity of one of Lucilla's handmaidens, servants, whoever.
Oh, that's so off. I know
It's
exactly
so
where you're going.
awful. Lucilla is talking with her husband, Pedro Pascal, and they're talking about something very like secretive and they don't want anyone to hear. And her handmaiden comes in and literally like backs out, like slinks back into the shadows. And it is like, I laughed out loud. I'm like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And that to me was the beginning of the end when I like started noticing all these like stupid problems. And there's just a lot of like dumb shit like that in this. So it really just took me out of the movie. I think there's a lot of shoehorned plots. I think it retreads way too much terrain of the original, and it pales in comparison to the original. Like the original to me is outstanding. It's excellent. And I get why people might not be into it. Like Dave, I totally get why, it doesn't work for you. But I think it's a great movie. I think it's a well-made movie. I don't think this one is, sadly. I think there's parts that are well-made. And I think the pacing is way too slow, especially for an action movie. It's just bizarre because for me, the original Gladiator just moves. It hustles. It's a 2.5-hour movie that does not feel like it. This felt it. I felt every moment. I will say though, Denzel Washington's performance is fucking incredible. I loved
unreal.
Unbelievable.
I think it's the best he's been.
I
think it's the best he's been since Training Day. I swear to God.
Whoa. I don't think I would say that because I think he's amazing in Fences, but it is something to behold.
You know why?
Why?
It's
I was going to tell you why, but I want to hear why too.
No, you tell me why.
No, you tell me why. You say.
It's because this is a character. This is a character part, and Denzel is a character actor who just happens to be a beautiful human being.
Yes, exactly.
And that is why he is a movie star. Because
you're right.
In his earlier roles, you can see, like, think about Glory, character part, and easy to chew to the scenery. Probably in that part, doesn't chew the scenery. Seems like he might, doesn't. Some of the earlier, like even fucking Ricochet, he's doing, John Lithgow is so unhinged in that, and he sort of matches him with his cop, like the cop version of that in Ricochet, which is a terrible movie. You don't have to see it.
I think you should see it, but
okay. And I just love the way that he just decided, I am going to eat this movie alive, and you are going to remember that Denzel Washington not only took over Rome, but he fucking took over
this movie.
Yeah, Ridley Scott's fucking set.
Yeah. Yeah, you cannot take your eyes off him. Every single scene, everything he's doing with his hands, with the rings, with his ear, like the robes you said, he's constantly shifting and playing with his body and with his clothes and with his accoutrements and accessories and everything. You can't take your eyes off of him. Seems like he's having the time of his life. Whether he is or not, I don't know, but he seems like he is. This is the most scenery chewing part I've ever seen him do, and he is giving the performance of a lifetime. It's excellent. It's so unhinged and absurd and ridiculous and fun and like malevolent and evil and like creepy but like magnetic and charismatic. Like it's everything. It's an operatic performance of stellar proportions.
Do you remember, he had a mustache, would he be twirling it?
Well, he has a Van Dyke, so
he does,
he should.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought a couple of times, even though I don't think it's quite as crazy as this, I thought a couple of times about Nicole Kidman in The Northman.
Oh, I don't know. I think his performance might be crazier, but it's that kind of level of her performance being wild.
I think if it is crazier, it's because his character, I mean, if I recall correctly, in The Northman, she's sort of losing her mind over what's going on around her, which is part of what it is. But she's also just like, she's
like rage fueled, where he's not rageful. He's just calculating and manipulative.
Yes. It's like the quieter version of that.
Yes.
The more malevolent
I was just going to say more terrifying version because he's so controlled.
You don't hear him coming.
Exactly. Because he seems like, and it's funny talking about how this retreads so much terrain of the first one. Oliver Reed's performance is so great as Proximo, the kind of head of the Gladiators in the first film, that at first when you see Denzel, I was like, oh, he's kind of doing a Proximo 2.0. That is not what he's doing at all. And it's so It's so incredible. It's incredible. It's so unhinged. It's so vicious, but in that like very insidious way.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved that performance. He's almost in a different film, and that's the film I wanted to see.
The energy in that role.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is bringing chaotic bisexual villainy to this role, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. And I also noticed, you know how he's got the Denzel walk where he's kind of bent just a little bit at the waist and his shoulders are forward and he moves fast.
Yeah.
He still moves fast here, but he stands up straighter in this part. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh.
He's definitely standing. He's still got, he's still 75% Denzel.
Yeah.
But he took it back 25%,
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed his body language and his like hand gestures and movements more than his walking. But yeah, no, that's a great observation.
Yeah, I think I every moment he was, because you see blah 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 with Connie Nielsen and Denzel Washington, you're like, all right, it's Capone and Malone, whatever, who cares? And then the way he just like just tears everything up and builds it back up in his own Denzel image.
Yeah. The movie drove me bonkers, but not the Denzel performance. That just was a sight to behold.
A surprisingly large part.
Yeah, it is a very large part, importance-wise and time on screen-wise. Yeah, you're right.
Basically the second lead,
I would agree with you. He is, yeah. But it's interesting that they're downplaying that.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Gene Hackman in The Firm thing, I guess. I don't know.
That's a good point, but yeah.
So, by the way, I just want to add that Denzel Washington is the only actor you may call by your first name, listeners. Okay. So.
Except for like Zendaya or Cher when they
right,
are a
the mononym
yes.
names, that's fine.
Right, that's different.
Yes, exactly. But Denzel is Denzel.
Yeah, I don't know what Cher's last name is, but we'll just use Cher Horowitz from, Clueless.
From Clueless.
You're not going to call Cher Horowitz, so Cher Davis, Cher Jones, whatever her last name is. So.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, any other final thoughts you wanted to say about Gladiator 2?
No, we can move on if you're ready to.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is I'm so bummed that I didn't enjoy this more, but thank God for Denzel Washington. I will say that.
Absolutely.
Thank God for Denzel. He's incredible. Amazing. Like I feel like you could write multiple essays on just that performance.
Like when he first shows up on screen, like you said, it's like, all right, he's doing a thing. And then like you get more into it and you're like, no, he's doing a thing.
He's doing a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. that performance will be burned on my brain. I will tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's talk about Blitz, which all three of us got to see. This is also a historical drama, but more arguably much more accurate than Gladiator 2. This is written and directed by Steve McQueen. It stars Saoirse Ronan and Elliot Heffernan, and it also has a bunch of co-stars, including Harris Dickinson, Benjamin Clementine, Paul Weller, and just a whole bunch more. Let me give you the description that comes from the press release. Blitz follows the epic journey of George, a 9-year-old boy in World War II, London, whose mother, Rita, sends him to safety in the English countryside. George, defiant and determined to return home to his mom and his grandfather in East London, embarks on an adventure only to find himself in immense peril while a distraught Rita searches for her missing son. Yep, that is true. This starts off and there's a text description about what the Blitz was. And it talks about how parents sent their kids away to the countryside to keep them safe from the massive bombing that was going on by the Nazis. And yeah, so right from the start, they're getting George ready. He has a close relationship with his single mother and his grandfather. They're both musicians. His mother's a singer. His grandfather's a pianist. And he's on the train and he starts getting made fun of because he's a Black biracial boy. And even though there's one girl who's like befriends him, and he's just had enough. He was also really, really pissed off at his mom, and she kept like pounding on the window of the train like, George, I love you, look at me, just say goodbye. And he like refuses to look at her, basically like ran off and was like, I hate you, because he didn't want to leave. So he decides he's getting off the train. So he opens the door when all the kids are sleeping, and he throws his suitcase and he jumps off, and then he's waving goodbye to his friend, and he starts off on his quest. And he has a lot of adventures and misadventures and runs into some incredibly lovely people, like a policeman named Ife, who is a black man, who is Yoruba, and they have a lovely connection. And Ife takes care of him and tries to keep him safe and brings him to a shelter underground. But then Ife sadly gets caught up trying to help somebody else, seeing like we don't see it, it's off screen, and then he dies, so he never comes back for George. So George takes off, and then he falls in with he's at a bakery and he's shooed away, and a young woman gives her croissant to him, and then she's like, come with me, we'll get you some food. And it's all a trick so they can get him into this criminal ring so he can crawl through openings and steal objects like jewelry and other valuables from dead people. And so it's a lot of adventures like that. He hops before both of those, he hops on a train and he meets 3 young brothers, and they all are going to travel together, but they're split up very early on, and one of the boys is mowed down by a train, which is terrifying. And meanwhile, Rita is trying to deal with the fact that her son is away. She's trying to busy herself with her job and hang out with friends. And then she finds out that George never showed up like he was supposed to. And she is beside herself, of course, and starts, combing the streets looking for him. And so that's basically the lay of the land. But let's dive into what you guys thought, and we can fill in more of the gaps plot-wise. Evan, we have not heard from you. What did you think of Blitz?
I think Blitz is one of those movies that's very clearly, meticulously crafted from a technical perspective. It has just really vibrant cinematography, really fantastic costumes, an excellent score. I think it has a lot of the technical elements that make a great movie. And I think there's something really interesting to the lens of race that this movie uses to examine this character's journey. Because otherwise, I feel like in a lot of ways is kind of a paint by numbers kind of war movie where you see people in lots of different harrowing situations. But I wish I found myself more emotionally invested and compelled by it. I'm still trying to put my finger on like what it was that made it not as emotionally investing and compelling as I wanted it to be. I just kept watching thinking, I wish I was more emotionally invested, even though on paper, everything was there. Like all of the elements were there from a technical perspective. And like I said, it was more interesting because it was using this lens of race to kind of examine this character's journey and the complications that a kid who is biracial would face in these situations. Finding people who are black that would care for him and treat him gently and tenderly, and also someone who is not going to treat him gently because she gives him away to that gang so they could use him as a, like you said, someone to go and crawl into tight spaces and steal things from them. But also there are white people who see him and think, oh, well, I don't want to be anywhere near you. So I think that part of the movie makes it more interesting than the average kind of movie of this ilk. But I just didn't find myself that invested in it. I watched it. I wasn't bored, but at the same time, I wish I felt more about it. Wish I was more emotionally invested. That's kind of how I felt watching it.
Oh, okay. All right. Dave, what did you think?
I think Blitz is kind of crummy.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't at first. I was kind of going along with it. And then, Homeward Bound, the Blitzkrieg journey, sends George to the Disney villains who are going to have him crawl through either Disney villains or Master of the House fucking Les Mis villains. I mean, so cartoonishly stupid that I was just like, it took me out and I never came back. And worse, it made me start thinking about all the things that I had glossed over that didn't work in the first half that now I was like, man, fuck that scene too.
Ooh.
Like, I don't, were you going to say something, Megan? I'm sorry.
I was, sorry. I was just going to say, I got very much Oliver Twist vibes.
Yeah.
Like very Fagin vibes. But yeah, but Les Mis and Master of the House works beautifully too. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I like Stephen Graham, but I don't even understand what those actors are doing in those scenes. I just don't get it.
It feels a little cartoony in a way that feels weird for an otherwise very kind of serious movie.
Yes, absolutely. And now I know that kids do all kinds of crazy shit because I have children and they do all kinds of crazy shit. But I would think that you would be able to impress upon your 9-year-old that our neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods and the city of London are being bombed to shit by evil psychos who want to kill everyone who's not them. So you're going to get on this train and it's going to suck, but you're going to go and stay with these other kids. And then to tell your mom, I just don't believe that. I don't believe it. I let it go. I even let go the other kid getting smashed by a train. The whole, how I feel about children in peril. And by the way, that happens so quickly, even though it's not really quickly because he's standing on the track.
No, but it feels very quickly. Yeah, no, you're right.
It surprised me.
Yeah.
Well, I went back and watched it because I was like, did they just kill off Artie or whatever his name is? And I watched it and I'm like, they did. Holy shit. And Steve McQueen, give him points for not giving a fuck about, I mean, if you've seen 12 Years a Slave, if you've seen Hunger, if you've seen to a lesser degree the what's the one with Michael Fassbender and Shame, he's not afraid to just make things like, so
it's true.
But that didn't even bother me so much. But once we got to the villains, I started turning around every decision that doesn't make sense to me leading up to that. And it made me not angry, but I was just like, I can't be into this anymore. I also thought Saoirse Ronan was miscast. I think the only scene she's really good in is the scene. I mean, she's fine.
Yeah, she's all right.
But I think the only scene that she's really good in is the scene where her husband or boyfriend or whatever, George's father, is being assaulted horrifically. And she's losing her mind trying to protect him. I was like, there's the Saoirse Ronan that I know.
Right. Otherwise, I'm just thinking we saw The Outrun a few weeks ago, and I thought that was a much stronger performance from her. More personal, more
for sure.
Wider, smaller movies, so more opportunity, but I definitely found that more compelling.
Yeah, and I also didn't like the episodic nature of this, and the sort of Charlie Brownization of this kid's, like every situation for him gets worse and worse. and then they kill off Grandpa. He fucking finally gets home and he sees his grandpa's corpse lying up under a bunch of rubble.
That surprised me because I think the opening faked me out into thinking the grandpa playing the piano was and them laying on the bed and him being kind of disheveled, or they're both being kind of disheveled and dirty, made me think, okay, this is the after. He's home safe now, and now we're going back to the beginning. I didn't realize that we were going to come back and the grandpa was going to be dead.
Yeah. So I'm going to sum it up, Evan, piggybacking on what you said about technically well made. Looks pretty good. Good score. Some of the character performances, like the actor who played Ife, Benjamin Clementine, just loved him.
He's
so
excellent.
Good.
He's
so good.
Excellent.
I love that whole part of the movie. I wanted to spend more time with Ife.
That part's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rip on child actors, but I don't think this kid is compelling enough to like hang a serious drama on, even though he's more of a conduit for all of the other stuff going on around him. And this is kind of like what Lester Bangs, how he described, Tusk, the album that Fleetwood Mac made after Rumors. A really well-produced, really good sounding piece of shit. So
okay, well, first of all, Lester Bangs is dead wrong because Tusk is amazing, but
Tusk is I think Tusk is half of a good record. I think if it was a single album, it would have been even better than Rumors. But
if you told me that Fleetwood Mac would be a topic of
things.
conversation in relation to Blitz earlier tonight, I would have laughed.
Well, this movie is I would imagine it's going to be polarizing because it has some elements that really should work, and then it has some other choices that are just fucking crazy. I think. Megan, I am interested because you've been giving me looks the entire time I've been talking like, what the fuck are you talking about? So
no, I don't think I'm giving you looks like, what the fuck are you talking about? I think I'm giving looks as in, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. I'm absorbing everything you both are saying because I do have a very different opinion. I thought this was great. I do understand what you're both saying about the cartoonish nature of the villains with the thieves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree. I agree. Having said that, to me, this movie shows right out of the gate that it has no qualms murdering people and killing children and being ruthless in that way.
Steve McQueen is like that.
I know. Yes, he is. So to me, it fits in with the ruthless nature of this is war. This is what some people do. They become crueler, more vicious, more unhinged because of circumstances that they're exploiting, because of trauma happening collectively at all times, desperation. So to me, it kind of weirdly fit, even though I agree that I think it would have been a much more effective part of the film if they weren't so cartoonish. But to me, it kind of worked in that we're seeing the best of people. We're seeing the worst of people. We're seeing people be indifferent. We're seeing people kind of mediocre. Like, we're seeing people at lots of different levels here. And like for instance, even in the scenes with Rita, Saoirse Ronan, and she's at work and she's like singing and it's for the whole nation. And then her coworker and one of her friends like stands up and starts like protesting about the need to open up the underground for the shelters. And one of her friends is like, I'm not speaking out. I'm not going to lose my job. They were ridiculous for speaking out. So I feel like to me, the movie is showcasing different reactions to war and to disasters. And so to me, it kind of worked in that way. It also very much worked on an Oliver Twist level. To me, that's a very kind of typical Charles Dickens thing to do. So it kind of fit in that realm for me. I like an epic journey. I liked the qualities that it was evoking, that as well as like the Odyssey, as well as numerous other things. I think it's funny that you called it Homeward Bound.
Thank you.
Yeah, it made me laugh.
That is great. I really liked Saoirse Ronan in this. I agree that her best scene is that scene where her boyfriend / husband is being beaten up by racists and then being taken away by the police, which is horrifying.
Yeah.
I also, like you, Evan, really liked the depiction of race and the conversations about race. Sometimes there were no conversations. Like sometimes, like the fact that the young woman who brings him to the criminals, she's a Black woman.
Right.
And so I don't want to say like he automatically assumes like, oh, she's going to be okay. But he does kind of gravitate towards Black people because there's a good chance they're not going to be horrible to him.
Right.
So, and that's not a spoken conversation that they have. It's all subtext. So I like that. I like that we get the explicit conversations, like with Ife, when he asks Ife if he's a Black man, and Ife's like, well, yeah. And then he's like, I'm not Black. And then later he tells him before he goes to sleep, he's like, Ife, I'm Black too. And it was like so sweet. And I loved it so much. So, and I absolutely loved the scenes with Ife. I thought it was I kind of wish that was the whole movie too, just because it's so beautiful and so wonderful. Yeah. And I think at the end, like the last kind of like 20, 30 minutes when George is running through the bombing and we have the fires. Like, that is insane in the sense of how harrowing intense it is, and it feels like it's ripped right out of a nightmare. And I was in.
And it looks good.
It looks great. Yeah, I agree with you.
All the fire stuff. Yeah, the flooding
so
in the station, all that stuff. When he seeks shelter inside a train station, and it's so crowded that people are literally sleeping on the train tracks because the trains aren't coming through till the next morning. And then water starts pouring into the station and flooding the station, and he manages to get out barely. And then I was kind of annoyed at the movie for doing this, but people are trapped and they're trying to get through the gate, and they ask him to swim under, and then he's stuck, and then they cut away from it. And I thought they're definitely not going to kill the kid, but it was annoying because they cut away and then didn't come back to him for like a very long time to show, okay, he survived that.
And it apparently saved a lot of people too.
Right.
Yeah.
But those scenes were really well done from a special effects perspective. They were really harrowing.
Yeah.
And those parts were compelling. There was definitely action-packed stuff that was compelling. And Megan, you were talking about the scenes with Ife, which I also really liked. But I thought it was really poignant where Ife found him. So he was in this arcade that I think was closed, or there was no one really around, and he was kind of wandering, and he was in this hall of all these dioramas and posters about the British Empire and all of its resources that it harvests from its colonies. And there are all these little dioramas of black workers, slaves doing things, and he's looking at this particularly garish, disgusting depiction of Africans, these weird statues, and he's just staring at one in the face, and it's like a close-up on the face, and then he's kind of snapped out of this daze by Ife finding him and going, "Oh, what are you doing here by yourself? Here, I'm going to take you in." I just thought that was a really poignant place for him to find him, and for them to go off on their portion of the movie together. I thought that was particularly well done.
I agree with you. It reminded me, there's a really great documentary that came out a few years ago about memorabilia that's racist memorabilia, like kind of depictions of mammies as like cookie jars and like
the lawn jockeys and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of that, like that kind of depiction of in those dioramas and in the like paintings and tapestries and what have you. Or murals rather. But again, that's a really great, I think, great wordless depiction of race and racism. And I think that is one of the most compelling facets of the film. I also find it fascinating to see war through the eyes of children. Whether it's Pan's Labyrinth, whether it's this, whether it's Angelina Jolie's First They Killed My Father. I find that really, really wrenching, but also fascinating. So I think on that level, it worked for me. This worked for me too. So, but I agree with you, Evan. That scene, in addition to all the great Ife scenes, that scene is really great proceeding when he meets him.
That in the Ife scene where they're in the shelter and the white people are trying to put up a sheet so they don't have to see I'm not sure if they're Indian or Pakistani, but they're wearing turbans, and I just remember he gives this really amazing speech about this is what Hitler wants. He wants us to turn on each other, and we need to unite and work together and respect each other, even if we don't like each other or even otherwise wouldn't associate with each other. And it's just it's a really brave speech, but it's also really eloquent, and I think does a really effective job of kind of getting everybody back on the same page and not squabbling about bullshit when they need to all be focused on working together and surviving together.
Yeah, I think it's also a really necessary scene. Like, it's arguably on the nose, like very much on the nose commentary wise, but I think it's a necessary scene because so often there's this notion that, well, the Nazis are evil and everyone else is good. And it's very binary, and that's just not true. Like, there's so many layers and nuances, and people were still fucking racist, like, even though they were anti-fascist. And so I think that scene is so necessary because it showcases people's bigotries and racism that are still very prevalent, you know, like that white couple being prejudicial against that Sikh man. Yeah, and it's like terrible, like as if I said, and of course, but I think it's really necessary, and I think it speaks to, you know, Steve McQueen's commentary on race and racism. But we also see like joy amongst Black people too. Like we see those scenes in like the club, and of course later we see that club got bombed and everyone died in it, which is wrenching and horrible. But before that happens, we see, you know, Black musicians and dancers and everyone having such a wonderful time. But then of course when they hear, you know, the Blitz overhead and they all just freeze and look up like, oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, that was also, I think, one of the really effective scenes in the movie. Really striking. We see this vibrant nightclub of Black performers, and we see Black and white people at this club together. And like you said, they freeze when they hear the music. They cut the music. They hear the air raid sirens, and then we don't see them again until later when the criminals are picking over the corpses. And you just see the bombed out remains. And it was horrifying, and it was definitely one of the parts of the movie that I think will be burned into my memory because it was so horrifying. It's just such a striking example of how quickly things can go from we're having a great time to everyone in the room is dead in these situations.
Yeah. Which kind of also is echoed in the subway scenes when they're in the underground, when they're sleeping, and then the water just comes rushing in like almost out of nowhere.
Right.
But you know what undid the bombing scene for me? Master of the house. So I want to, I'm not going to shit on this anymore, but what I am going to say is, in my opinion, there is another World War II movie out there with similar themes, not entirely similar, but it is kind of a corollary, is John Borman's Hope and Glory from 1987. I even remember the tagline, "A world at war, a boy at play." And it takes place during the Blitz. And it's this little boy and his 3 or 4 older sisters living at their parents' house and going through the Blitz. And all of 2 of the sisters are Hope and Glory. All the sisters have like names like that, I remember. So Hope and Glory, the name of his sisters, and also the name of the movie. And yes, John Borman, highly variable filmmaker, but I think it is quite an excellent piece of work. And similar themes with your Blitz and your small children.
Yeah, there's a lot of war movies with kids.
Yeah, I was actually reminded a little bit of the movie. I think we covered it a number of years ago, Summerland, with
Gemma
Arterton and Gugu Mbatha Raw. But that's about a kid that actually is sent away and does go to the countryside.
Yes. Not a kid who jumps the train and says, fuck
you. But also a biracial main character, if I remember correctly. So.
Yep. That's a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah, where's Gemma Arterton? More of her, please. Anyway. And more Gugu, for that matter. Oh, sorry. No first names only, except for Denzel.
Right. But we have said in the past we're gaga for Gugu on this podcast.
Yes.
So.
She is a delight.
She always is. Yes. All right. Well, do we have any final thoughts on Blitz?
No,
and Dave, it's okay if you shit on it more.
No, I don't. I don't really have anything else to say. I just I find some of the just the choices, the storytelling choice, not storytelling so much, the actual story, really, really questionable. Some of them I just don't understand, and some of them, like the racial component, I understand completely. Makes a lot of sense. And in places is very effective. But a lot of that is undone by, largely the Disney villains from like Oliver and Company or whatever the fuck they're from.
I mean, they are in Oliver and Company, which is an adaptation of Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
With dogs.
Yeah. I just thought of them as a combination of Les Mis, Master of the House, and cartoonish Disney villains. And not even the good cartoon, not even like Sir Hiss or something like that. Just some
I was like,
fucking
Disney
guy,
villains are amazing, actually.
Yeah.
like some guy who punches himself in the face a bunch, just like, Christ.
Actually,
That scene was creepy. I will give you that.
That scene was creepy, but also kind of stupid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like if he had done it once or twice, I would have been like, you've made your point and we know
Right.
you're evil.
Yeah,
But then
you're
when he
a creep.
keeps doing it, it's like, oh, you're also insane. So, I know war does crazy things to people, but Jesus Christ, Stephen Graham.
Stephen Graham is good as a villain, though. I will say that.
Yes.
He's a good villain.
Yeah. He's also good as a good guy. He's a versatile actor.
He is.
Anyway.
True.
Evan, did you have any final thoughts on Blitz?
Well, two things very quick. One, I'm just frustrated in retrospect how cheap it felt to me that they killed the grandpa right at the end.
I'm sorry. It's not funny about the grandpa. I don't know why that made me laugh. I'm sorry.
In retrospect, I'm just in talking about it now again, and we're talking about it and then thinking about it again. It just made me mad how cheap it was to kill him at the very last minute. But you also said there are moments that Stephen Queen captures of joy in the Black community in London. And it very much reminded me of his Small Axe films, which I think do really delve into that. There's plenty of drama in there, but there is also a lot of joy. And those moments felt very reminiscent to me of the kind of sentiment and the atmosphere that he captured in those films in a good way. So
yeah,
that was the other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah, those Small Axe films are incredible, and I agree with you. He is so great at capturing mood with music and dance kind of all together.
Yes.
Because I think about the Small Axe film with the party, the like house party, which is so good. And and I feel like you get snippets of that here in this with the nightclub scene and Saoirse Ronan and her partner when they're dancing and singing. Anyway, so glad you brought those up. Those are good films. And Dave, I'm glad we disagreed in the sense because, like I said, you gave me a lot to think about. I need to ponder more of this film. So
I'm glad it wasn't one of the ones where you just feel, kind of on the defensive the whole time.
No. Like I said, I just was more like, that wasn't my experience. Why is that? Yeah. And so, I'm going to think about it more. All right. Well, let's recap. So Wicked is in theaters right now as of November 22nd. And yes, I would highly recommend it. Gladiator 2 is in theaters also as of November 22nd. Dave, would you recommend it?
I feel like you're either going to see Gladiator or you're not. It's not going to be like, I don't have anything to do Saturday afternoon. I'm going to go see Gladiator 2. I don't see that happening. So your decision's already been made, folks.
That is a fair point. I would say skip it, except I think Denzel's performance needs to be witnessed. So, and I'm never mad at seeing Pedro Pascal on screen. So there's that too. So I would say, so it's like a weird, like skip it, but also you need to see it for reasons. And Blitz it was in theaters starting November 1st. And as of November 22nd, it is streaming on Apple TV Plus. Would you guys recommend it? I know you guys had such interesting kind of nuanced takes on it that I'm not sure.
I think ultimately I would. I think that there's enough there that I found compelling that I think it's worth seeing.
I think if you ignore some of the performances and the pacing, I think a lot of the filmmaking is very, very good, borderline great, which is part of the reason it's so disappointing to me otherwise.
Yeah, because of the uneven elements. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And I liked this. I also think there are, while it's not a flawless film by any means, I think there are a lot of great things about it too. So I would recommend this as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We want to give a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Klammer. Otto, thanks so much for making us sound great week after week.
Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. You can also find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We're at Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook and at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Threads and Letterboxd. You can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
I love your radio voice, Dave.
Thank
you. You can also text us. Let us know. Did you see any of these movies? Are you excited to see them? Where do you fall on Blitz? Gladiator 2. Did you love it? Did it drive you cuckoo bananas like it did me? Did you also love Denzel Washington? And Wicked. I want to know what you think about Wicked too. So yeah, we love hearing from you. We love hearing your thoughts and opinions. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. It helps us out a lot. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. Take you to your preferred platform of choice. You can also just go directly to Apple Podcasts, which helps us out a lot, or on Spotify. And if you really, really like the show, consider becoming a patron. For $5 a month, you get access to our weekly bonus episodes, as well as our entire back catalog of bonus episodes, and you get to vote in monthly polls. This week, we had a bonus episode on the Japanese comedy from the 80s, A Taxing Woman, and we had a great conversation about that. So you can go check it out. If you're already a patron, thanks so much. And thank you so much, listeners. My name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast, member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can find me I'm not on Twitter anymore. So Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Threads. Dave Sees Movies. It's in there somewhere.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, co-author of Your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and co-host of the It's the Pictures podcast. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
Thanks so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.